everybody.
So the Gemara that we learned yesterday, we spoke about the argument in the argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Rav, and they argued regarding the recital of a bracha. Do you need to say Malchus? Do you need to say Hashem is king? Is it enough just to say Blessed are you Hashem, or do you need to say Melech? Now, the commentaries tell us that the word Melech actually is doesn't really work. It really is Melech Ha'olam. You need to say, when we say Malchus, you need to say Hashem is king. You have to say king of the world. You can't just say king. That doesn't help either. But there's an argument. Rav says the main thing is saying Hashem's name. Mentioning Hashem. If you don't mention Hashem, it's not really a bracha. And Rabbi Yochanan says that you need to say Hashem, Elokeinu, Melech Ha'olam. You have to say Melech Ha'olam. Yes, sir. Ben.
I wanted to say the reason we have to say Ha'olam is because he is the King of Kings, to separate from other kings. So we have to say the King of the world.
It sounds good, but I didn't see that in the commentaries. They do give reason why king doesn't really mean anything. It's not refer. If you say king, it's referring to the. It ends up.
King is basar v'dam.
Yeah. No, your point is a good point, but the commentaries are trying to explain why is it so important to say king, and they say because the rabbis had a certain intent when they said king, and it means king of the world. And if you just say the word king, it doesn't. It wouldn't necessarily mean what the rabbis instituted it for. I'll give you an example. In the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch in chapter 214, he brings here that even if you didn't skip out only the word ha'olam, but you said melech, you would need to repeat the bracha, because Melech alone is not really included in this rule of Malchus. Is not included in the Malchus that the rabbis established, because it has no meaning without the word Ha'olam. Only if you say the word Ha'olam does Melech have meaning. That the word Ha'olam that's next to it. Because if you want to tell me, so why are you saying Melech? So let's say you're saying Elokeinu Melech, Baruch Hashem Elokeinu Melech. So you're saying our God, that's a king. That is not what the rabbis meant when they wanted us to include Malchus. They didn't want us to just say Hashem is a king. So just being a king is not good enough, because that's not what the rabbis wanted. It's supposed to go back on the Baruch, that blessed is Hashem, that you say in the beginning of the bracha, Melech Ha'olam, who's the king of the world. And then you conclude Shahaka, or Asher Kiddishanu, or Sha'asa, that all of this is going on the word of Baruch, blessed is he. And if you don't say Ha'olam, it ends up that it's not going back on the Baruch, blessed is he, who's the king of the world, but rather the word Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem our God. But Melech will be left there alone, unless you would say HaMelech, the king. And if you will say that Melech goes on what it says afterwards, Melech Sha'asa Nisim Labiseno, or Melech Shahakol Niabedvari, the king who everything came into existence from his word. This is not what the rabbis meant when they established it, but rather that it's all should be going on Hashem. In other words, it's about Hashem, not on Melech. He's not the king who everything came into existence from his word. It's rather Hashem that's the Ikar HaBracha, not on only Melech. In other words, it shouldn't only be emphasis on Melech. Therefore, if you say Melech HaOlam, then it actually will work. So somehow the word melech alone is not good enough. And if you add the word ha'olam, it fixes it up. And if you want to say that melech goes on the end of the bracha, that's not good, because what it implies is that you're not saying Hashem is the creator of these things. You're saying the melech, the king, is the king who created these things, but really you should be including Hashem. And therefore, melech ha'olam would fix that problem, because then everything is going back on Hashem and melech ha'olam. It's going on both, but it's not just going on melech. So if you just say melech, it would have the wrong impression. Now, it does seem like he's saying that if you did say ha-melech, maybe that it seems like that would work if you said ha-melech, the melech.
That's what we say on Rosh Hashanah, right? Ha-melech.
Yeah, but we don't say it in a bracha. So that totally doesn't. I would like to look into this further. What exactly you gain if you say Hamelech? Somehow, it's not considered,
because it's just one and only. You have to describe somebody that is one and only, to separate it from the mundane kings or from the.
No, it's saying it works. If you say Hamelech, it works.
That's what I'm saying. It's the lightest way of saying it, instead of saying Melech HaOlam, which fully.
Can I just ask a technical question?
Yes, technical question. Yes.
Thank you. It seems to me that the root of it is the phrase that has to be in every adoration is Baruch Hashem, right? Because that's above everything else. And so we're sort of parsing titles. Yeah, so Melech is a king, but Ha-Melech, the king, we're not being clear, but Baruch Hashem is, to me, the core of adoration to God.
So you are following not the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, but the other opinion, Rav, who says that the main thing is saying Hashem's name. Called bracha, if it doesn't have Hashem's name, it's not a bracha. But
I guess,
Rabbi Yochanan adds that it has to say Melech, Malchus.
Right, but that's secondary to Hashem.
But is it crucial to a bracha?
I don't think so.
So you like Rav. Well, the Gemara, it's interesting. The Gemara did say that our Brisa, and Abaye mentions this, that the Kavosei Derav Mistabra. Abaye said that it sounds like it's following Rav. But all the commentaries say, no, we follow Rabbi Yochanan in Halacha. So even though the Gemara seems to imply initially that the Rav fits with the Brisa, but the Gemara did answer that at the end. And the Gemara said that even the Brisa could fit with Rabbi Yochanan. And if you look on Tosfos over here, Abaye says that the Rif paskins like Rabbi Yochanan, the Re paskins like Rabbi Yochanan, and then Shulchan Aruch paskins like Rabbi Yochanan. If you look at Shulchan Aruch, this is the whole discussion here that I'm bringing, that you have to say Melech HaOlam. And what there is a big question on what we do with our Shmona Esrei. Because our Shmona Esrei, we don't say Melech HaOlam.
I don't know how to shut this off.
Just close the phone.
The Shemona Esrei, we don't say Melech HaOlam, right? If you think about it.
Right.
Say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Aviseinu, Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchok. We say a lot of Elokeinus and Elokeis, but we don't say Melech HaOlam. Baruch Atah Hashem Magen Avram, Baruch Atah Hashem Chaya Mesim, Baruch Atah Hashem Hakel HaKadosh, Baruch Atah Hashem Chayin Adas. That we have all these Baruch Atah Hashems, but we don't have the Melech HaOlam. So the big question in the commentaries is, how do you deal with that? Even Tosfos himself is bothered. What do you do about the Shemona Esrei?
But Rabbi,
Yes.
In certain situations, you have to be more clear. And Yochanan is very clear.
Rabbi
It
Yochanan,
tells
yeah.
you that he is the king of the world. Now in the Shmona Esrei, we already said blessings before, and there's a bunch of blessings in there, and they're all referring to the same entity. So maybe you don't have to be clear every line, over and over.
That would be good if the beginning of the Shmona Esrei says Melech HaOlam, and then it skips it at the end.
Yeah.
But in our Shmona Esrei, we don't even have once Melech HaOlam.
Maybe the difference is that in the Shemona Esrei, you are directly addressing God, where in the Brachas, you're speaking about God.
That sounds like a nice answer. But if it's an established rule, you would think that all brachas should have it.
Is the Shemona Esrei considered a bracha?
So what you're saying does fit a little with what the Alter Rebbe does say. The Alter Rebbe says that he gives an answer that there are a number of answers, but the Alter Rebbe's answer is that the Shemona Esrei was established that way without the Melech HaOlam, and he says it's because it's not praise on a benefit, and it's not a blessing on a mitzvah. It's rather begging for one's needs in order to present your praises of Hashem, and afterwards do your prayer. So because it's not really a praise of before getting benefit, and it's not a blessing on a mitzvah, but it's a blessing that it falls into a different category. So is it a bracha? Yes, but it's a different category bracha. Like there's a new category now that the Alter Rebbe is telling us. And this category is that you're going to be asking Hashem for your needs, and in order to do that, you first have to recite praises of Hashem. And because of that, it's the rabbis did not establish the word malchus in it. So it doesn't sound exactly like you're saying, although you have an interesting point that you're speaking directly to Hashem. But it is along the lines that it's sort of like a different category type of bracha that you are. The emphasis here is just to give praises before you ask your needs. And for that, the rabbis didn't establish to say he's the king of the universe. And for the same reason, Friday night, when the Chazan repeats the Shemona Esrei, he also, it's not exactly a repetition, but he says something called a Me'ein Sheva, like a summarized version of the Shemona Esrei. And the same thing applies there. It's the bracha there does not have Melech HaOlam, and the reason is because that is in place of it's similar to the Shemona Esrei that we say. So that Shemona Esrei is that prayer is supposed to be connected to the Shemona Esrei prayer. So just like Shemona Esrei doesn't have it, there also it doesn't have it. Yes, Robert.
To me, it comes down to, out of every Jew's mouth, we say Baruch Hashem. We don't say Baruch Hashem HaMelech HaOlam. All right, it is a blessing of God, right? Blessing, Baruch Hashem. We're praying for the good. So to me, the shorthand of it is it's Baruch Hashem, irrespective of if he's Melech HaOlam. We all know that. It's implied. If it's not implied, it's a continuation of that phrase. But Baruch Hashem is adequate enough to recognize there is only one God, Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question is, where did Baruch Hashem come from? Was it a Chabad, or was it before? Because I think there's also, there's some intrigue in this process of recognizing Hashem in our everyday life, and when we wish for something good to happen, in praising Hashem, God, that it's under God's reign that something good should happen.
Right. Well, the word Baruch Hashem is there are verses. There are verses in the Torah, where it starts off.
But as an everyday vernacular, it's become, next to Shema Yisrael, Baruch Hashem is on that top 10 hit parade, okay?
So it's definitely not a Chabad invention. It would be nice if we could take credit for it. It's not. But there are numerous places, like in Tehillim, it says Baruch Hashem.
Sure. No, I understand that, but it becoming a more practical use in everyday life.
Yehuda has a question. Yehuda?
Yeah. I believe the first mention in the Torah is Yitzchok saying it, and this was before he converted.
Ah, okay.
And what
there is a verse.
What he said is Baruch Hashem Yom Yom.
I think also Eliezer, the slave of Abraham, was the first one to say
Hashem, Elokei Adoni Avraham. Yeah, I think maybe that's the first time where it would say it. I have a concordancia which has every word that's in the Torah. I have to take a look, and it'll pull up Baruch. We'll find it exactly how many times in the Torah it says it. But in any event, yeah, it's definitely well established from way back. Let's see who has questions over here. Ezra, yes.
So why doesn't it say why does it say Melech HaOlam as opposed to HaMelech HaOlam? It's because of the fact that it's a construct form, and the Hey goes on the second part, not the first. So therefore, it would be Melech HaOlam.
Okay. Good to know. Okay. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say the difference between the blessings on food and the Amida, I'm thinking is the blessings on food you say in public and people hear you, not all the time maybe, but sometimes they hear you. But when in the Amida, you're talking directly to God, it's personal, you're not saying it loud, nobody hears you. So God knows who you're talking to. It's not a problem of recognition, but when you're in public and saying a blessing, we want the people to know who we are blessing.
So you're saying Melech HaOlam is more important in public than in private?
No.
I would think so. In private, you know who you're blessing. But so,
right.
But if you get used to saying it,
but you make the same blessings at home, and it's at home and not in public. So
anyway, it's a nice thought. It doesn't fit with Shulchan Aruch. It doesn't. In other words, they don't make a differentiation if you're in private. At least I didn't find such a differentiation. Now there is an opinion that argues with this and says Melech works. There is an opinion that says if you just say Melech, it's okay. But the Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch both say Melech doesn't work if you don't say Ha'olam, and you would have to repeat the bracha if you didn't say Melech Ha'olam. And they all have in fact, Tosfos here has an answer for why Shemona Esrei doesn't have Melech HaOlam in it. The Tosfos' answer is when you say Elokei Avraham, that is Melech HaOlam, because Avraham made Hashem king over the entire universe. He was the one who revealed Hashem as king over the world, and therefore it is considered, like you said, Melech HaOlam. So that's an alternative answer why Shemona Esrei doesn't have Melech Olam, because you say Elokei Avraham. And then additionally, Taisa says, and what about the Me'en Sheva, the bracha on Friday night, also doesn't have Melech Olam, but there you say, it says, Hakel HaKadosh She'ein Kamayhu, the holy God that there was no one like him. So that is considered like Malchus, similar to Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which is in place of kingship. When you say Hashem is our God, there is only one God. In other words, there's no one else. That is that is in place of being saying kingship. Now he.
Don't say it's
right. Okay, so that's Tosfos. There are other explanations as well, but that basically this is the discussion here about Hashem in Melech HaOlam. Yes, Moshe.
Yes, Rabbi. It says in the Sidur, in the Ashkenazi Sidur, "Got from Abraham."
Right, that's interesting. That prayer, there's a prayer Saturday night that some, mainly women, I think, say. Right. So you say Elokei Avraham. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. I did want to mention that I looked at
Abraham. I don't think it was ever in Hebrew. It was always a Yiddish expression, Gott von Avraham. So I don't think you'll see anywhere where it says Elokei Avraham. But okay.
What do you mean, the Shemona Esrei?
No, I'm talking about, you were just referring to that tefillah.
Yeah, Moshe mentioned that it's interesting.
I thought you were calling it Elokei Avraham as Gott von Avraham. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Moshe's mentioning there is a prayer on Saturday night that women say, and it's interesting that it has that starts with that same term.
Yes, we say it. We say it every Motzei Shabbos. Right. But it's Gott von Avraham in Yiddish.
It's not a bracha. It doesn't start with Baruch Atah Hashem. I mean,
no,
whatever.
not at all.
Right, but it's interesting that it does start with that.
I'm sorry, I should not have interfered. I should not have jumped in. I was in the middle of the balcony, and I'm going to go back.
So I did want to also mention that I sent you an email, Ben. Did you get my email? Ben had mentioned yesterday.
I didn't look.
No,
I
Ben.
haven't looked at anything yet this morning. I'm just davening.
I sent Ben an email because Ben yesterday wanted to explain that why do we call secular languages choil, and Ben wanted to say because on Shabbos maybe you're not supposed to speak anything but Lashon HaKodesh, and I did find some sources for that. There are
10 of them.
What?
10 of them.
There were a number of sources, so I've
heard them too, but that's because they don't speak Divrei Chol on Shabbos.
That there is a custom, not to speak even a secular language, even Divrei Torah or something. You don't speak another language. So obviously we don't follow that, or at least most people I know. But it says, like the Arizal. It's brought in Pri-Eitz Chaim that the Ari was careful only to speak Lashon HaKodesh, only to speak Hebrew on Shabbos. It's brought in Mishnas Chasidim. Person should be careful all Shabbos, only in Lashon HaKodesh. Even things that are necessary, only speak them in Lashon HaKodesh or Tzadikim. So there are some sources. So what I wanted to mention is that maybe that's why, as Ben was saying, maybe that's why we call secular languages choil. Maybe the Gemara is hinting to that minhag, that they call secular languages choil because they are weekday languages, that there is a minhag to only say Hebrew languages on Shabbos. So as Ben was thinking, it's a nice insight. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. You put a lot of work into it.
Chol is the essence of secular. That's the heart of the word. I'm looking up now in what's his name, Motzen's Sefer about the roots of English and that everything comes from Hebrew. And he doesn't
Anyway,
mention secular.
The point is that there are other ways of giving a term for other languages, not choil. And the fact that it uses the word choil is a little hint that it's like a weekday language. It uses the term choil, which means mundane, or weekday could mean. Right.
Chol means mundane because chol is also sand, and there's plenty of sand in the world.
You want to keep adding to this, man. All right. In any event, it's a nice little hint, I guess. Okay, so let's see where we are over here. The Mishnah. We're up to the Mishnah. And I mentioned yesterday also about if a person recited a Bari Pri Ha'etz, a blessing on if he was reciting a bracha on wine and he said a Bari Pri Ha'etz, who creates the fruit of the vine. So I mentioned the surprising view of the Magen Avraham that there is also a Tosfos that seems to say this as well, but that you would not fulfill your obligation on wine. And we tried to discuss it yesterday, why maybe what the explanation could be. Why would you not fulfill the obligation on wine if you said a Bari Pri Ha'etz? Grapes and wine are fruit. They are fruit of the tree, of the vine. And I did want to mention that that's not the only view. There are other views that disagree, but even that, just to mention that we tried to explain that view, and possibly the point we came up with that we quoted from some of the commentaries is that maybe the bracha shehakol is not just because it's generic, it covers all types of things, but it's because it is specifically meant for that. Like the rabbis established a bracha that could be used for all things, and that's why it works. And therefore, ha'etz would not work for Bari Pri Hagafen, since the rabbis wanted Bari Pri Hagafen to be a ha'etz bracha. They took it out of the category of ha'etz, and it doesn't work just because ha'etz seems to it seems like it should fit within that category. Or even though shehakol works, but ha'etz doesn't work. I guess that would be the way of explaining it. That even though shehakol would be a bracha that covers wine, but ha'etz would not. It's possible that it wouldn't cover wine according to this view. I also saw that there is a discussion about we mentioned yesterday about reciting a shehakol on a smell, because when you recite the bracha shehakol, there is discussion among the halachic authorities if that would work. Generally, for smells, there's a generic bracha bari mine b'samim, and for food, there's a generic bracha shehakol ni'abvarei. But what about if you said shehakol for the smells? Would that generic bracha work for smells as well? So it's something that is discussed in the commentaries. Yes, Robert.
Apropos, I was having dinner with friends last night, and one of the people, a gentleman, is an aficionado of good cigars. And he said to me, ask the guys in your class if there is a special bracha when you smoke a cigar and you appreciate it. So I forgot that there is this bracha for generic smell. So anyways, I have to go back and tell them, yes, there is. So anyway.
Well, that is interesting. I don't know if I would think a cigar, but I would think of a pipe, maybe. Cigars, yeah. I don't know about the smell of a cigar, but the pipe, would be an interesting question to look into. Would there be a bracha for smoking a pipe?
I guess the obverse of it is if people don't like smoking, then it's not a bracha at all. It's a curse because they're smoking in front of you, right?
But let's say for those that like it, or
right. No, I understand, of course.
you know, but there are brachas for, for spices, for different, for different,
Right.
I would think, but you know what, I never really thought about it, but I can tell you practically speaking, people don't recite a bracha on the practical side of it. But I have to look into why that is. Maybe when we learn the laws of smell, which is coming up, so we'll have to deal with that. Okay, well, let's do the Mishnah. We are on page 40b, and we're up to the Mishnah. The Mishnah over here is maybe about 18 lines up from the bottom of the page. And the Mishnah says that on al davar she'ein gidulei min haaretz, on things that don't grow from the ground. Oimer, a person says shahakol nihya bidvar, that Hashem, everything came into existence from Hashem's word. And now the Mishnah talks about certain food items that is a little unclear what the bracha, if there is a bracha, and that is al hachometz, on vinegar. And here we're talking about vinegar from wine. What would the bracha be on vinegar? On vinegar. There is a discussion exactly what type of vinegar we're talking about. Is it mixed with water? How edible is it? And but bottom line is it must be somewhat edible. If there is a discussion here that it's obviously considered edible, because there is discussion if you would recite a bracha on it. If it was totally inedible, you would be exempt. So I guess a simple way of explaining it is we're talking about you mix water with the vinegar, or you put the vinegar into some other soup, and the main thing is the vinegar.
Or vinegar with oil on a salad.
Well, but then you wouldn't say that the vinegar
okay.
you wouldn't recite a bracha on the salad dressing. You recite the bracha on the salad.
Okay,
so you need to come up with a case where the vinegar is going to be considered
it's the dominant.
Dominant, right. Yeah. So that's
okay.
That's what they're struggling with. Now, if it's not a strong vinegar, maybe then it's okay. It could be it's the wine turned into vinegar, but it still has some alcohol content. So maybe that's for a person's excited over it. So, but whatever it is, you're drinking vinegar, vial hanoivlis, and on noivlis. And noivlis, the Gemara is going to have an argument what noivlis means. So we'll just leave it for the Gemara. It's a type of dates, but we'll soon see what that means, what type of dates we're talking about. There is the word noivlis means withered. V'yolehu lo yibo. Its leaf doesn't wither. So noivlis means like wither. V'al goivai and goivai. Goivai are a type of grasshoppers that are kosher. Now, I don't know how grasshoppers taste, but even if they taste good, there is a problem, and that is that grasshoppers are a type of food that's a curse, because grasshoppers, it is a food, but it's also a curse when they're alive, they eat up all a person's produce. They ruin a person's produce. And they're considered a curse. So on the one hand, you're benefiting, I guess, from the food part of it. On the other hand, they're not really blessing that. So that it's subject to the argument here. Rabbi Yehuda says, Kol shehum in klala ein mevarchen alav. Anything that's like a curse, you don't make a bracha on it. Now, the simple reading is he's referring to all three cases. And he's talking about noivleis, the fact that the dates withered. The goivai means the chometz, the fact that wine is spoiled. You have good wine and then it becomes vinegar. That's like a curse. And goivai are, and these grasshoppers are considered a type of klala, and they come because of a curse that the world is receiving. Now we'll see in the Gemara that maybe noivleis is not. It's possible that he doesn't necessarily refer to noivleis either, but at least the simple understanding is that he's referring to all three. Yes, Ben.
I want to say goivai was also used in Egypt as a makkah, so maybe that's why it's really a curse.
Okay.
One of the 10
plays.
But in the text, well, in the reference here in Art Scroll, it says there were kosher varieties of locust.
Yes.
Okay, so you have to make that distinction.
Even today, the Sephardic people do eat locusts.
Okay.
They have some Sephardic people, they have a tradition which ones are kosher, which ones aren't. But
I find it sort of interesting when they're benign, they're called grasshoppers, but when they create a plague, they're locusts. So I never put that together until just understanding this reading.
Yeah, I guess locust has more of a negative connotation and grasshoppers, right. So that is this is the discussion in the Mishnah about these items, and would you recite a bracha? So the simple reading is, so the first opinion was shahak on the called the Tanakama. Shahak on these three things. The Tanakama would say it's shahak on the and then the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is that anything that's a type of klala curse, ein mevarchen alav. You don't recite a bracha on it. What did you say, Isaac?
Sorry.
Okay. So then the Mishnah continues and it says, Hayu lefanav minim harb. If a person has many types of fruits, so the Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, im yesh beineim and Shiva, if there is among them one of the 7 species, olav hu mevarech. On it, he recites a bracha. And the rabbis say, mevarech al eza mehen sheyirtze, you recite the bracha on any of them that you want. Any of them that he wants, he recites the bracha. So that's the Mishnah. Of course, the Gemara is going to go through that. Are we talking about where the species are? Now, are we talking about the same bracha type of foods? Are we talking about different bracha? Is it within a bracha? Is it a question of which one to recite the bracha on and have in mind the rest, or is it which one to do first and recite a bracha on another one? So these are discussions that we'll see in the Gemara. Now, the Gemara starts off